leads you homeward? What is it that gives you the power to make that change? Ask that question, take that journey. What is it that says you have done well, asks you to learn more, that brings you to stillness, holds you up in hard times? It is relationships, the beating heart of our faith. We share this hour, our truths, this air, our hearts. Come, let us worship together.
And now I invite us to join together in song. It's hymn number 1014, Answering the Call of Love. 1014. The words are wrong. Oh, we have changed. So this service is about how things evolve over time. And standing on the side of love, we don't all stand. There were different ways of in capturing the same metaphor. So I invite standing on the side of love, though you're welcome to stand to the hymn of fish, to say answering the call of love, an acknowledgement that we all answer the call in different ways.
What's the number? No, 1014 is standing on the side of love.
Yes. Instead of standing on the side, we're going to say answering the call of love. So it's answering the call. So this story is a folk tale from the Congo in Central Africa called The Blue Coat and the Red Coat. And it's a wonderful story, a good illustration. To our congregational costume department, and we decided to blow the congregational budget on this one. So I didn't have blue, we're going to have green and white and red. But this is a story about argument. With anyone? No. So you won't know what this is about. But it started with a group of friends, and a group of friends had a little joke on his buddies, and just play jokes. So he got a coat. He had this wonderful coat that was half red. I didn't rehearse this too much. And then half green and white. And came up with this wonderful coat. He didn't tell his friends about it. But then he walked alongside, and and so he went between, and he walked with his coat. And his friends said, "Oh, did you see?" They didn't know it was him because he was walking from. Did you see my friend with the beautiful? What did they say? Because what color is the coat? Red coat, right? Yeah. And the other friends who was on the other side and saw him from the other side of the town said, "It wasn't a red coat. It was green and white." Right? No. Of course it was. and the other side said, "No, it wasn't. It was definitely a red coat." And the kid said, "I saw it with my own eyes. It was completely green and white." And soon they got to yelling really loudly, which is 10:45 on a Sunday. Maybe we won't get there. But they were arguing about, it was red, it was green and white, it was red, it was green and white. And then the friend came back, and he had the coat. And they could see that it was red on one side and green and white on the side. And the friend was showing off his coat, but all the other friends were all mad at him. And they said, "Why did you create this argument? Why did you make us fight with another? We created all this strife." And said, "No, I didn't. I didn't. I just wore a coat that's red on one side and green and white on the other side. And you're both right. It is a red coat, and it is a green and white coat. And both of these happen to be part of the coat. You only saw part of the story." So both the friends who had seen the red coat and the friends who had seen the green and white coat saw the world a little bit differently. Beautiful coats as well. So that's the story about the red coat, and we are grateful for the Congolese folk tradition for sharing that story. We're going to, any children who wish are going to join our DRE, talking about the kind of how we be there for one another in the 8th principle, which we'll be talking about the sermon as well. So we're going to sing the children out to their religious education with the words on our order of service. Have our time of prayer and meditation. I do want to, as is our tradition, if there are any joys or sorrows to lift up in this community, if there's anyone who's got something deep to their heart that they want to share, you can share on the chat in Zoom, or we'll share it aloud here. If anyone would like to share joy or so I'm switching the order of service up a little bit, which I tend to do. We're going to have the offering before the chat for those of you whose seats are at home. But I'd like to have the reading now, if that's okay. We've got a reading. We're going to do that after. Is that okay?
That's fine.
So we're going to start with this reading is from the Dhammapada, which is a collection of sayings attributed to the Buddha, so from the Buddhist tradition. Cobbling together some of the Dhammapada. Only through love can hatred come to an end.
Only through love hatred come to an end, from the Dhammapada, which is a collection of Buddhist sayings. Never does hatred cease by hating in return. Only through love can hate to an end. Victory breeds hatred. The conquered dwell in sorrow and resentment. They who give up all thought of victory or defeat calm and live happily at peace. Let us overcome violence by gentleness. Let us overcome by good. Let us overcome the miserly by liberality. Let us overcome the liar by truth.
So we'll have a time of prayer and meditation. So I invite you to just notice your body in this space. Breathe in and breathe out. As we gather our spirits on this beautiful day, we think of all those who may be struggling, having a rough time. We think of all those who grieve. I said we continue to hold in our thoughts the loved ones and families of beloved ones who have gone before, including Bobby Katz, Stanley Goldstein, Shirley Bernard, Vicky and Carl Madsen, Jean Kangas, and all those who have died recently, and all those who mourn. May they know peace in their hearts, and may blessed memories of the dead be as a blessing. As we breathe in and breathe out, we seek to breathe out the thoughts of control or victory or grasping, and breathe in openness to life, the beauty of this life. Breathe in peace. On the news again, here came the news of terrible violence. And we breathe out the way of violence and destruction. Breathe out our own enmity and hatred. However carefully we have earned it over the days and the years, we seek to breathe that out and breathe in peace. Breathe in goodness. Breathe in the beauty of this world. We breathe out the striving. There is no ultimate victory over a person or another group. It's only through the fullness and wholeness of life can be achieved. So we breathe out that conquering for power over, and we breathe in calmness and happiness and peace for ourselves, for those we love, for those we struggle with, and for those we do not know. We breathe in happiness and wisdom and peace. I invite us, as we gather together in this community, to just be aware of our breath in this place, to simply breathe in, breathe out. There's nothing you have to do in these next couple of minutes, nothing you have to be. Just simply let peace be present with you. Be who you are and let yourself breathe, knowing that breath is always bringing changes to us, wonderful changes. So let us take a moment together to meditate, to pray, to simply to breathe, to be present in our lives, in our communities, and that surrounds us. So now we come to the time of our offering, which is a tradition in this congregation. But just before we do, it's our joyful tradition to welcome new members, and we have two new members who are ready to sign the book. Many of you may know they're wonderful, and if you so I'd like to invite forward both Mary Evans, the chair of our membership committee, and Lynn and Warren Rosenthal to come forward this morning.
They left.
Oh, hope it wasn't something I said. They may be across the hall.
Oh, they had to leave. Oh, okay. I thought Lauren stayed, but no, she said they had to leave. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Speaking of, they are wonderful, and I hope everything's okay. So we do if you haven't had a chance to meet them yet, do say hello. They're wonderful people. So now is the time for our offering, and each, as we take an offering to support this community, we share it with the wider community and with a partner each week. And this, am I stepping in?
You said you wanted me to do it, but you won't. There's the word.
And this month, the half-plate offering is shared with the Ulster Immigrant Defense Network. And Ulster Immigrant Defense Network helps immigrants and refugees in many ways, including providing help with household needs, assistance with obtaining a driver's license, rent and utilities assistance, social services, responding to ICE actions, supporting school-aged immigrants and refugees, with advocacy and education in their home districts, and providing case management services, just to name a few. It's a very important organization in our community, and we're proud to share the offering with them this morning. So you can give, whether you're here from the plate, you can give via the website or on the square, the PayPal code. But if you don't have anything, you're very welcome anyway. You're bringing your presents to us this morning, and we're very grateful to that. A spirit of sharing and generosity, we will now take our offering. Song is performed by Catherine Catabiani. It's La Pow by Babs Brown. Thank you for all that you bring to this congregation. This congregation is a gathering of gifts and simply would not exist without the talents and the generosities and the presence of so many wonderful souls. So thank you for all you bring, and let's share it with the world, out into the world where the world so needs the generosity and compassion and abundance. Let us share this abundance. So today's service is about how the center of our faith as Unitarian Universalists, so to say. And so we're going to have a choir performance about that, a wonderful choir performance. Our occasional choir, as they're called, are going to perform Sound the Chorus of Faith by Grace Lewis McLaren. Well, I know you think that choir, wonderful, stirring choir performance is the high point, but I have to tell you, this sermon has everything. Obscure, difficult Bible passages, denominational bylaws, and even a PowerPoint presentation. Can I get a woot woot? So we're going to start. Oh, if we go back to the. Can we go back one to the four to the? We're going to start with a passage of the Bible. I had to kind of. I didn't know where the word shibboleth comes from. Have you ever heard the word shibboleth? Yeah. I'll get to it later in the sermon, but Judges, which is a difficult book. There's a lot of fighting in it. For the people who Bible, Judges would be a good place to start to confirm why you don't like the Bible. There are parts of the Bible I find really difficult, and partly that's why I like it. So I'm going to read this reading, and like I say, it's not, it's tougher. But this is about, there are all these fighting going on. These are different Jewish groups at this time, between the Gileadites and the Ephraimites, and they're going to talk about a ford, which is a crossing in a river like that. So Jephthah, that's the ruler of the Gilead army, got his Gilead troops together and fought Ephraim. And the men of Gilead hit them hard because they were saying, are nothing but half-breeds and rejects from Ephraim and Manasseh. Gilead captured the Jordan at the crossing to Ephraim. If an Ephraimite fugitive, the men of Gilead would ask, are you an Ephraimite? And he would say, no. And they would say Shibboleth. But he would always say Sibboleth. He couldn't say it right. Then they would grab him and kill him there at the fords of the Jordan. 42 Ephraimite divisions were killed on that occasion. Jephthah judged Israel 6 years, and Jephthah the Gileadite died and was buried in a city, Mizpah of Gilead. So, now if we'll go one forward. So this sermon today is about Unitarian Universalism, and I don't often preach about Unitarian Universalism directly, even though this is a Unitarian Universalist congregation, and I am a Unitarian Universalist minister, but for topics like hope and love and death and grief and vital distinctions in Kantian moral philosophy and the pennant hopes of the New York Mets, which are pretty good this year, not bad. I like to think if a visitor comes in off the street, and we are very fortunate to almost always have visitors, both online and in the sanctuary. I like to think that if a visitor knew nothing about Unitarian Universalism, and even if they came here and decided that they definitely weren't a Unitarian Universalist, I mean, if our approach to religion wasn't their cup of tea, I like to think that that visitor would still think, well, even so, they were a nice bunch of folks. And even if I didn't agree with the sermon, the topic was something that was interesting to me. And I hope this topic will be. Bear with me. I've inhabited this faith of Unitarian Universalism for most of my life, more or less since I was a young child. It's been also my career. It has shaped who I am, helped me immensely in seeking meaning and finding consolation and inspiration in this chaotic, often difficult life we live in. I owe a lot to Unitarian Universalism. And yet, I'm not triumphalist about our faith. I don't think Unitarian Universalism is better than other religions. It works for me as well. It helps me live my life, and it's the path that I have chosen. But as the saying goes, there are many paths up the mountain, many pathways to meaning, to God, to the mystery, whatever it is we discover. Unitarian Universalism is kind of like my vehicle. Gets me where I need to go. Shows me the way to truth in all its non-dogmatic complexity and glory and meaning, in all its justice-making challenges. I don't worship the vehicle. Spiritually speaking, I drive a Cell, something like that. I didn't want to say I was endorsing any brand, but Model T is gas. I don't know about the gas mileage. I don't intend it to be flashy in Universalism, but if you ask me about it, I'll say, you know what? I've seen a lot of people go a lot of places with that vehicle. It might do very well for you. You might want to check it out. Now, Unitarian Universalism is a non-creedal faith. A creed is a statement of faith that subscribers align with. Our spiritual ancestors rejected the Nicene Creed back in 300 AD, and since then we've evolved into a religion with no specific set of beliefs. You can be atheist and be a Unitarian Universalist. You can be Buddhist, Universalist Christian or Jew. By and large, we reject the notion that you can believe whatever you want, because our tradition strongly urges us to reflect carefully on how we are to live. what it means to be a good person and to take justice seriously. So we don't have a statement to sign on the dotted line. It's still, I hope, and I find, challenging faith. In some ways, more challenging, right? Because it's up to us, each of us, to come up with what we really authentically believe. Not having a creed is great and all, if you like that sort of thing, and I do, but it does make it difficult to answer the question, Unitarian Universalist belief, right? Who are you? It's not that we believe nothing at all, we just don't have a set creed. And Unitarian and Universalism are two different faith traditions, and I won't go into that. I'd love to bore you with the history, so just call me up anytime and I will. But they merged in 1961, and I think it's unfortunate that the names are so similar. I think we should change the name eventually, because Unitarian Universalist, it sounds cool. UU is great, but Unitarian Universalist is a long name. But when we merged the two traditions, which as you can imagine was a pretty big deal at the time, we came up with 6 principles that described our faith. So here are the 6 principles from 1961. And I don't know if you can read all this. I'm not going to go all over it. But you can see it's got some really helpful, great things. To strengthen one another in a free and disciplined search for truth as our foundation of religious freedom. Now, having this statement of what we believe is a little bit of philosophical thin ice as a faith. We say we don't have a creed, but here's this statement about this is what we believe. But it's more of a description of where we're at as a faith. That is generally this is what Unitarian Universalism is all about, rather than something we all recite every Sunday. And as you can see, as a description, it's out of date. We have to encourage cooperation with men of goodwill in every land, to serve the needs of member church. Oh, no, that one's fine. There was brotherhood founded on ideals of brotherhood. No fault in 1961, but things have evolved and our language has evolved. But it got some really good stuff, and it was revised in 1985, 40 years ago. So we'll show the next slide. And these are the first, it was 6 principles then. And the language is just beautiful. Many people, including me, just really think the language is so beautiful. The inherent worth in justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, free and responsible search for truth and meaning, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. So we had 6, but then we thought we're going to have a 7th one. And in 1995, a 7th principle was proposed and added.
I have 2 1980.
Look at that. That's it. Yep. See, I told you there was PowerPoint. And we added respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Interdependent web. Our growing ecological awareness played a big role in adopting the 7th principle, which has become a universalist thought. This idea that we're all interdependent of each other is not unique to Unitarian Universalism. It's prominent in Buddhism. Dr. King, we talked about last week, frequently referred to it. But it's deeply important as Unitarian Universalists on one another and dependent on so many others, including different species. And as some of you know, there's currently an 8th principle. So we've had 7 principles for a while now, and there's currently an 8th principle. We're talking about on Thursday. You're welcome to come, Thursday at 6. Anyone come by? For a discussion and a vote, and this is the proposed 8th principle. Journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community, accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. Now, as I say, this principle is just proposed at this point. Several hundred congregations have voted to approve it at their congregation. One of the UUA principles. It's going to be voted on with a preliminary vote 2023 in June in Pittsburgh. You'll all be there, right? You can all come. And then there'll be a final vote in 2024 in, I want to say Honolulu, but it's not. I hope it's somewhere exciting. I don't know, 2024. But it gets more complicated than that. So the 8th principle representatives in 2024. But 2 of the UUA bylaws, stay with me a moment here, and the bylaws are kind of arguably the center of our faith, though I'm going to argue maybe not quite. We're all about. And according to the bylaws, they are to be reviewed every 10 years because this evolving is really important. And so a committee was charged about, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago, with coming up with a new Article 2, and they were bold remit. They said, look, we want you to have a really go the skies, we want you to think what it could possibly be. And they also mentioned one of the things they were tasked with was love was mentioned again and again by Unitarian Universalists, that love is deeply important to us. Put love at the... So there's a new proposed Article 2, and these are the values with love, pluralism, diversity, evolution, growth, justice, interdependence, equity, and generosity. And there's a lot of words, we'll do the next one, about, I'm not going to go over all of these. And some people say it's too wordy and it doesn't have the poetical beauty of the 7 principles. There's all these questions about this. But that's, I know if you're coming here the first time, your head may be spinning a little bit. A sermon is not really a great forum for delving into this stuff, though I think it's important to mention it. Because again, this is how we are. If we're non-creedal, who are we really? So the 5-second news clip on Article 2 would be, some people really like Article 2, and some people really, it's controversial in other words. And sometimes tempers have flared over whether it's a blue coat or a white and green coat. And we've had these arguments about which statement to adopt. And there will be a vote, so it will be decided. And it may well be voted down. 10 years ago, there was another revision to Article 2, which was voted down. So we don't. And 10 years from now, it'll be another revision. But 7 principles have a special place in the hearts of many Unitarian Universalists. It can be, for many, a huge part of why they're Unitarian Universalists. They just look at them and they say, that's it. That speaks to what I want out of religion. That's a religion. And it was 6 and it may be 8. And I know how we came to this faith may play an important role here. The 7 principles, you think, yes, that's what drew me to these congregations. Now I, as I say, grew up Unitarian Universalist. Got the next slide. No, you haven't read all this, don't worry. That's the Fern Street, those banners when I'm going up, the guy that does now. Fern Street Universalist Church, where I grew up. And I don't remember the 7 principles from my childhood. In fact, I was born before they were created. But I still learned what Unitarian Universalism was. I learned from the way we studied the different religions of the world. I learned from how we were given our own copy of the Bible to study, but also learned about sexuality and what made for healthy relationships. I learned from the fact that the ministers never told me X, Y, and Z, but encouraged me to question and think for myself. I learned from the outing, building homes side by side with people of other religions and none, and from the tree planting out in the park, cherishing the earth. I voted for officers at the youth group, and that as a teenager, I was invited to serve on the church board of education, and my voice was valued. I learned from the kind coffee hour and the kindness of the other children. I learned in so many different ways what Unitarian Universalism was all about. So when I first saw the 7 principles, and I don't remember when it was, but when I first saw them, I'm pretty sure my reaction was, oh yeah, well, of course. We should treat every person as if they had inherent dignity, that we were devoted to a movement with the democratic process, that interdependence, how we connect to each other, was essential. I'd already lived it and been taught it. The rest was just the writing on the wall. We're all about the democratic process. So there will be this vote, and whether it's voted, the new Article 2 is voted, or the 8th principle is voted, those are votes, and they're important votes, but I'm not too worried about it. As for the 7 principles, which have taken on they're, partly because they're so well written, taken on a very special place in many people's hearts. Even if, I can assure you that if you're in favor of it, if Article 2 is totally changed and the 7 or 8 principles are removed, the principles in some place or another will probably... There's no rule that when they're out of the bylaws, they can't be used. They were in the bylaws. I just knew them as the 7 principles for years. But at some point, whether it's this year or 50 years in the future, the principles will change, and that's fine. We do have, maybe not a rule, but it's a guideline that revelation is not sealed. That's the words of James Luther Adams. And what he means is that we don't have any final statement of this is what the truth is, contrary to some other religions. Or this is what Unitarian Universalism is all on. Revelation is ongoing. We're always learning new things. Revelation changes over the decades in this new generation. It'll keep on changing. We are not a static faith. But I hear you asking, what about shibboleths? I came here for shibboleths. I haven't had any shibboleths. So I want to give you your money's worth. So here we go. In the Bible passage you just heard, in that Bible passage, we had 2 peoples, as you heard, who were bitter enemies, the Gileadites and the Ephraimites. And they hated each other so much that they talked badly about each other. And the Gileadite soldiers were guarding a ford. People were crossing it with their friends. The Gileadites, or their bitter Ephraimites. You couldn't tell looking at them. You couldn't tell if it was your enemy. So the soldiers under Jephthah the Gileadite came up with a plan. You know how different people in different cultures pronounce words differently. So they asked the people to pronounce the word shibboleth. Shibboleth doesn't mean anything terribly important in ancient Hebrew. It means ear of grain, and it may have been actually slang for stream or ford. But the Ephraimites pronounced shibboleth, shibboleth, or sibboleth. They pronounce it sibboleth, the Ephraimites. They didn't have the SH sound in the way that they pronounce things. So when the Ephraimites were asked to prevent it, they only could pronounce the shibboleth as sibboleth. And then they were opposing camp, the opposing people, and they were butchered under the soldiers under the orders of Jephthah. It's a terrible story, right? A horribly effective application of xenophobia. And what's worse is that this story has been repeated many times throughout history. In the Frisian rebellion in the 16th century, the crew of captured ships were asked to say "buta brea on grey tzis," which is butter, rye bread, and green peas in Frisian. And those who could not pronounce it the Frisian way were beheaded. In the 20th century, the dictator of the Trujillo asked those living on the border to pronounce the word perejil, or parsley, and thousands who didn't trill their R's in the Dominican were executed as Haitian immigrants. And in World War II, it was common for American forces to ask suspected spies approaching checkpoints in the Pacific to pronounce the word Lollapalooza. I know, how did it become a music festival? I don't know. And anyone who pronounced the L more like an R was shot on sight in many cases as an alleged Japanese spy. So here's where I'm going with this. I, as I said, subscribe to a non-creedal faith, Unitarian Universalism, but I don't have much of an issue with creeds. I've made my own credo statement, what I believe, many times, and I think it's helpful sometimes to put into word what we believe. I don't even have an issue with the Nicene Creed, but I know many wonderful people who do, and it's what they believe. I have no problem with people believing things and writing them down. I don't have a problem with creeds. I do have a problem with shibboleths. We human beings use creeds and beliefs and vocabulary in the way we talk. Are they one of us? Do they believe as we do? Are they part of the club? There's always a danger of this happening in Unitarian Universalism, as in every other movement. Even the beloved 7 principles can become a shibboleth if they ever get started worshipped as, I say, let them go. They're only words at the end of the day. Words that point at the truth in a beautiful way, but let's not get wrapped up in words. I'm not decrying either side to the extent there are sides. I consider myself pretty strongly progressive, but I think it's true that so-called woke progressive turned call-out culture into a shibboleth test, into a giant, next slide, into a giant vocabulary test. Who knows the most advanced vocabulary and calling out those who are deemed behind in their intercultural. Now, I'm not decrying the effort. I think we can and should seek ways to learn to be more respectful of each other. Is a big part of that. So it's really important. But if it starts to become an argument over whether someone said shibboleth or sibboleth, then we can be sure we're in the wrong territory. Not the territory the Dhammapada speaks about overcoming this victory over another. At the same time, we read in the news today the banning of the so-called woke curricula, we've seen in the news in Florida, because they mention critical race theory. The banning of whole curricula from our schools for talking about uncomfortable topics is definitely a shibboleth move. Oh, last slide. I know, I didn't hear any more chance for more, but this is the last PowerPoint slide. Monica Jacobson-Tennyson, at the beginning of our service, asked, what is it that calls you here, that calls you onward, that calls you inward, that leads you home? And she suggests an answer to that question. She writes, it is relationship, the beating heart of our faith. I think relationship is an adequate center for our faith. And it's a test of sorts. If a belief or a concept separate and belittle the outsiders, if it categorizes us into hierarchies of greater or lesser inherent worth, if it leads to less of this and more patrolling the fords of the Jordan, or if it feels like that, well, it's probably not the way we should be doing things. We know the difference between this, walking hand in hand, and the shibboleth test. We can feel it in our bones. And if we can discern the difference, and I believe we can live it. We will not be known at the end of the day by our statement of faith. We will not even be known by being a non-creedal faith. We will be known by our kindness. We will be known by whose hands we have chosen to hold as we travel through the fields. We will be known by whatever difference we make to provide a home and food to those who are starving and cold. We'll know by where justice happens and why it happens. The rest is all just words. So let's live the best words out loud through the everyday acts that bring us a little closer together as one people, one love. Amen. Now let us sing together hymn number 1028, The Fire of Commitment, 1028. So, friends, as the choir taught us, let us sing our all, for all people, for all beings. There's a fire of commitment within you. The light of love is within you. It's worth choosing your words carefully, worth choosing our words carefully. That it's worth living abundantly out of that fire, out of that love, and being true to that love. Being that love that draws us to be closer together, to respect and appreciate one another. That love that brings out more in us than we thought was there. That love that continues to surprise and astonish us and build one world. Let's be true to that love. We our closing chalice reading. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. Our thanks to the worship team. I consider them the 96 the best. Please stick around for tea and fellowship. There's a tech and worship meeting if you're interested in that after the service. And on Zoom, we've got the Zoom fellowship hour. So have a wonderful Sunday. Thank you for being with us. Blessed be.